Up next on Inside the SCCA, pondering Pikes Peak. Welcome to Inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Bielanski. This is the part of the episode where I try to guess or remember which episode we're on. I think it's 174. It's 170-something. I can guarantee that is accurate. My guest tonight, a return guest, Ryan Cheek. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Hi, Brian. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for hopping on with me. I know it's a little late in the evening on the East Coast. You're, I think, in North Carolina, right?
I sure am. Yeah. A little after 9 o'clock now we are.
There you go. And you always come on here and tease me with that beautiful car in the background. I always enjoy that as well. That's one of your time trial cars, right?
This one is more of my autocross and daily driver. It's my 2017 Mustang GT.
Very nice. So, well, welcome. We had you on, I guess it must have been last October or so. When did you finally get accepted into Pikes Peak? What was...
I think I spoke to you before we got accepted. So it had to have been previous of January of this year. It was about the third week in January when we got the notification that we were in.
That's right, because we did the show and you talked about the possibility of going to Pikes Peak, I think is what we talked about. And then it became official. And then it became like a sprint just to get to the starting line, right? Because you had a brand new car, a brand new experience. You'd never been in the car before. You wanted to get some test time in. So let's go back. We told your story last time about all of your exploits in SCCA. So let's not go over that again. Let's start in January. How do you find out that you will have been accepted as an entry into Pikes Peak? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Is it something very non-exciting like that?
It's a very exciting in the fact that you just are waiting, but it's an email.
Okay.
You get email confirmation that you got in, and you start seeing other people posting that they got in, right, and making their announcement, and you're not getting your email yet, and you're not getting your email yet. And you're hoping that, the people that are running Pikes Peak are kind enough to tell you that you didn't get in. So it's not like you ever missed an email.
Right.
But, we were very fortunate and we got the email that we made it in.
So I imagine it being kind of like when I was a kid and you were waiting to get accepted into college, you'd wait for the mail to come and you'd slice the mail open and it would say you either got in or you didn't get in. Now I see all these people, YouTubing their notifications that they were accepted. Is it kind of like that? You're waiting to open that email and you're like, I don't want to open it. You open it. You open it. No, you open it.
It was, you always get a little bit of that preview on your email, like of, the body of the email. And, my friends and I were very, very excited. We knew the day was there and we were kind of expecting to see it. And I got the glimpse. I kind of already knew, but then I video called like my really, really close friends and I opened the email with them. And they were all at work, all doing their own thing. And, I'm just reading that we got in. And it was really, really exciting. But yeah, just trying to record that moment with some friends was really fun.
That's pretty cool. And this was, you said January, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that is 6 months or so, depending on when it comes in January, to the date when you have to be ready to go and do this Pikes Peak thing. When did you start? When did the idea of doing Pikes Peak pop into your universe?
So, we had always been, once I was approached by American Cross Kart, we were kind of planning and hoping we were getting in. They were very confident. I was not as confident as they were, but they were very confident and, trying to make plans. And definitely getting the acceptance made things a lot more concrete. But then it just became, well, I need a lot of seat time. We need to figure out what we can do. So, it became autocrosses and any kind of way I could get behind the wheel of those little rocket ships, which is completely different than anything I had ever driven before.
Right.
That was definitely our go-to thing.
So, but that was when you really thought you had a chance to do it. So for me, I knew what Pikes Peak was. I've heard of the hill climb. I saw stuff in like Racer Magazine or Auto Week or whatever. But then right after I got married, we went to a wedding in Colorado. And we had a whole week, and I said to my wife, I said, you know what, let's go to Pikes Peak. And she had never heard, maybe even now she hasn't even heard of the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. But I had, and she's like, Pikes Peak, that sounds like fun, So we did it just as a touristy thing. And as I'm driving up the hill, I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, that would be the coolest thing. So I've got to go back to 1990, maybe 2000, 99 or 2000. And since then, I've said to myself, that's on my bucket list. So for me, it's been more than 20 years since I've said, yeah, I'm going to do that. So we're going to talk about that at the end. I haven't told you about that part of this conversation. But at the end of the show, I'm going to have you tell me what I need to do to be able to put my name in as a potential competitor so that they'll actually say, oh, this guy's not an idiot. Maybe we'll let him in, okay? Because you're a rookie this year. And a huge class of rookies, right? This is like the biggest class of rookies ever, right?
It was, yeah. I believe it was over 20-something rookies for this year. Largest newcomers to the hill climb ever. So
we've got some video and some pictures of the hill climb that we're going to roll through the show here while we're talking. I'm going to run the pictures first because I don't want to give away the end yet. So we're going to roll through the pictures here a couple of times. So the pictures you're seeing right now on the screen are Ryan getting ready for the race and a couple of shots of the race. And then we'll pull the video in here in a little bit and talk about that. So, all right, so it's January. You've got an invitation. Did you need to tell them what kind of car you were going to do before you applied? Was that all part of the application?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. You are, you're telling them what kind of car you're going to be driving, if you're driving for a team, because, you get drivers driving for Ford and Acura and that kind of thing. So I'm driving for American Cross Kart. And then you've got to submit a resume of your driving experience. And that is a very daunting task because I've kind of only been doing this for about 4 years now. And you don't want to pad it. You don't want to be like every little motorsport thing you've ever done. But, in the same regard, you're competing against people or, you're applying, I should say, against people that have huge road racing and are names for themselves. So, that is a daunting little bit when you're applying, but yeah, you've got to provide a lot of information when you are applying.
I'm wondering if they look at the number of entries and say, okay, we can put this many people on the mountain on race day. And let's say we've got 60 entries of people with experience who've been here before, but we can have 80. So we're going to pick 20 rookies this year. I'm just curious. Maybe you don't know the answer, but, I
wish I knew. I do, when I got accepted, I was like, oh, they're just letting everybody in. I mean, that's honestly how I felt. I was like, they must have not had very many people apply, but I have heard through, back channels that people were not accepted this year. So that feels pretty good. That makes me feel pretty special.
Absolutely. So we're seeing pictures of the car. Tell us about this little hot rod that you took out there.
So for Pikes Peak, I was driving a 2021 American Cross Kart. It is a cross kart, just like you would drive a sedan or a coupe or, an off-road buggy. It's a cross kart. That's the type of vehicle that it is. It's powered by a 750cc Suzuki GSXR engine. We added a small turbo on it for the hill just to give us some extra power. Naturally aspirated, it makes 130 to the wheels. We were doing dyno tuning with it. We were running a very mild tune, and we were hoping to make about 180 to the wheels.
Right.
It's rear-wheel drive, rear-mounted engine. It's considered an open-wheel vehicle. There's no power steering. There's no ABS. It's just very visceral, very raw vehicle. And in the same breath, I'll say it's so much fun and very intuitive to drive.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to show the video here in a little bit, and it's pretty fun to see you going up the hill in this thing. So how did the deal with CrossCart come together? Did they notice you? Did you find them and say, hey, I'd love to do this. Do you want to be part of it? How did it all come about?
I happened to be at PRI in Indianapolis in December of 2023. And so was American CrossCart. And I guess they had kind of been following my social media. They also follow some big names in my local hill climb series. And I guess they saw I was there and kind of wanted to talk to me about potentially driving their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
That was a no-brainer for me. I literally was like just saying yes. But yeah, they approached me and we had a very quick meeting. And I don't know how to explain that, but you meet people and you can just kind of jive with them. You just feel very comfortable around them. You guys are kind of speaking the same language. And, obviously I was very excited. Pikes Peak has been a dream of mine, but, I was definitely nervous about who I was going to be signing up with. But as soon as I met Scott and Susan McMillan, I was like, yeah, no, this is good. Nice. I like this.
You can tell, kind of, at least I can, and I think some people have a good sixth sense about people. Within a very short amount of time with a conversation, I can tell whether or not I could work with somebody, and I think some people have a real good sense of that pretty quickly. So it's really cool that in a very short amount of time you're able to say, yeah, these are people that I think we could spend some time with. So.
Oh yeah. So, American CrossCart went to Pikes Peak in 2021 and Johan Schwarz was their driver. That is a name I'm sure a lot of us have heard. He's a drift king. He's a wheel-to-wheel racer, very renowned professional racer. So I had done a little bit of my research and that was the first thing I told them. I was like, I'm not Johan Schwarz. And they said, that's okay. We want you to drive our cart. And, so it felt very good. We were very open from the get-go.
Here's a little secret. I don't think anybody other than Johan is Johan Schwarz.
He's amazing. He really is. And he's such a kind and real human being. No, I really like Johan.
We're going to get him on the podcast. If you want to learn or hear a little bit about a conversation with Johan, we had him on the Super Tour at the June Sprints. I think it was the Spec Miata races that he joined us for. It could have been Spec MX-5, but one of those two. Check it out, Johan. And he's not just the Drift King. He owns the world record for the longest continuous drift. I don't know what that means. I do know what that means, and I don't know how long it was, but he's just a character and so knowledgeable and so giving with his time and his knowledge. So you were able to spend some time with him coaching you, right, beforehand?
I sure did. That was something I was not expecting and something that is still extremely, extremely grateful. I got to meet up with him at his wet skid pad clinic at Carolina Motorsports Park. And, to have somebody who's been in a cart, raced it up Pikes Peak, telling me, okay, this is how the cart's going to react. This is how you need to get used to it. I'm used to driving much bigger, longer vehicles. And when they start to step out or when they start to oversteer, you have a little bit more time to catch it and a little bit more time to get back on track. With a short wheelbase, you've got to catch it quick and you got to get right back on the driving line. Like you can't, if you wait too long, it just kind of spins out. And that was something that he was so very, very good about explaining to me and working with me. And he could visually recognize when I was being slow or when I was overcorrecting too quickly. Like he was an amazing coach. That was an invaluable amount of time. And, and he was really genuinely excited for me. He said, yes, this is a bucket list race. This is, I'm so grateful I got to do it. And I'm so excited for you that you get to do it. So it just kind of speaks to what a great person he is.
So when did you first get a chance to sit in that American cross kart?
I saw the cart. Let's see. I did a Cars and Coffee in Morrisville, North Carolina. It's over near Raleigh. It's actually one of the largest Cars and Coffee. I got to bring it out and be a part of Racing for ALS kind of charity event. They usually pick like a main theme and
Sure.
a nonprofit to support during those events. So Scott and Susan are based in Virginia, and they were able to bring the carts down. They still had the wraps from 2021 on, but we got to do the Cars and Coffee, and I got to sit in them, but the seats were still adjusted for Johan, who is over 6 feet
Yep.
tall. I am 5'3", so I couldn't actually drive them, but that was the first time I got to set my eyes on them and get inside of them. When I finally got to drive them, we did a autocross down in Charlotte, North Carolina at ZMAX with the Central Carolina region down there, and I was terrified. I was very, very nervous. We were running really old dirt tires, and I'm bringing out this cart, and I have friends that are, part of that club and who are announcing and saying stuff like, she's taking this to Pikes Peak. And so there was a little bit of pressure. And, we did win first place in A-Mod, but there was only a handful of cars. But it was very reassuring that I could get in this car and I could drive it, especially around ZMAX. It's got a very smooth pavement. It's kind of slick if you've ever been there. It's a very high-speed autocross. And, we had a lot of fun. And I gained a lot of confidence from beginning to end at that event.
So were you able to keep the car then to work on it throughout the spring to get it ready? Or did the team do all of that for you and then you got to basically arrive and drive at Pikes Peak?
I was an arrive and drive all season.
Got it.
That's a very new feeling for us. We are super grassroots. We work on the cars here in the garage. So not being the one working on the cart, it felt weird, but kind of bougie and awesome at the same time. But yeah, Scott and Susan would bring the carts to the different events.
Sure.
So we did the DMAX autocross, and then we did the wet skid pad with Johan. They even brought them out here to Western North Carolina, and we did another autocross, and we did a Cars and Coffee down in South Carolina. And we did get a little bit of track time with the NCCAR region up at, at the NC region up at NCCAR.
Okay.
So, I was a little bougie, definitely arrive and drive, and I flew to Colorado, and the team drove the carts out. So, I don't know what to say. Obviously, it's a dream come true,
Sure.
but we're still all very, very grassroots.
Yeah. Did you get to do an East Coast hill climb with the car before you got to Pikes Peak?
I sure did. I got to do the Pine Mountain Hill Climb in Pineville, Kentucky, which is part of the Appalachian Hill Climb series. Absolutely invaluable experience. The cart was not turboed at that time. We only got like one little event in with it turboed. So every time I drove the cart, it had different wheels, had different tires, different kind of setup. So it kind of was always changing every time I got into it. But no, getting to run it at a hill climb felt really, really good. I got a lot more comfortable with, kind of pushing it in the turn and feeling what it's going to do. If it's understeering, get on the power a little bit. It actually handles like a really small Mustang. So it was pretty great.
That was going to be my next question. Most of your experience is in cars like the ones you're sitting in front of right now, right? Mostly Mustangs, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how the kart drives different or the same, like you just said, as the Mustang.
So the Mustang that I normally drive is the S197 05 to 09. It's an 06. So it is a solid axle Mustang. It's front engine. It's very, very heavy. Mine's not that great on power. This one's pretty good on power for autocross and stuff. So moving into the much smaller kart, which weighs 850 pounds without me in it. And we got to Pikes Peak and we weighed it, and it was 1,030 pounds with me and all my gear and a full tank of gas. So still extremely, extremely light. It took a lot of getting used to the short wheelbase. Johan described it as twitchy. I just think of it as fast. It's just, you just got to think a little bit faster. That weight shift's going to happen a lot faster. But the way the kart handle is, I say this word consistently, it's intuitive to drive. It's like a really great go-kart that's not breaking your spine, because I've done go-karts and those are terrifying. But, definitely some similarities, that it's a car and it's going to go fast and you got to shift your gears. So you're paying attention to a lot of the stuff, including like the butt feel and what the cart's going to do, but definitely very different. It's lightweight. It turns on a dime. It's just similar, but different.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's get to Pikes Peak. Which day of the week is race day?
Race day is on Sunday.
Okay.
After a week of practice.
So that was going to be my next question. What is the lead up to Sunday look like if you go to Pikes Peak?
Monday, the previous Monday is your tech day, which seems it was probably one of the most stressful days I've ever been through, because, you're doing all your paperwork. There's so much stuff that goes involved just being a driver, not to mention all your gear is getting looked over. And then the car tech is the most in-depth tech I've ever seen. They are just grilling the people. I'm just a driver, so I just point everybody to Scott, who is the builder and owner of the car. So that was super stressful. Your first day on the mountain is on Tuesday.
Okay.
They divide the mountain into 3 sections: the lower, middle, and upper section. So your first day, you get assigned a section. For me, I was on the middle section, which begins at Glen Cove and runs up to Devil's Playground.
Okay.
So my first day and first run was the longest hill climb I had ever done, because most of my hill climbs are about 2 miles.
So just the middle section was longer than any of your previous hill climbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you wake up at 1 a.m. You're leaving your place that you're sleeping so you can be on the mountain by 3:30 a.m. You're setting up, unloading, drivers meetings at like 5:15 a.m. and they usually try to get you off at 5:30, 5:45, depending on the weather. So you're kind of running up just as the sun's coming up, but it's not crested over the mountain. So I don't have headlights. So that was kind of a neat thing. It's not dark, there's
Right.
definitely ambient light, but that was interesting. I mean, you're just going and going and going. That was wild.
So what's the reason for the 5:30 a.m. start time? Is it just because there's so little time on the mountain they want to get going and give you as much time as you can get?
Yeah, you actually have to. All the racers have to be off the mountain by 9 a.m. because they open it back up to the public.
Oh.
Normally the mountain is open, I believe, at 7 a.m. But during race week, leading up to race day, they keep the mountain closed till 9 a.m. and they don't let the public in until 9 a.m. So you've got to get your runs in, get going, and they start packing you up about 8:30.
And
you got to get off the mountain.
That's the only time that day. So at 8:30, you're done for the day.
Yes.
Wow.
But you've been up since 1 a.m.
Sure.
So, and you go back to your residence. Hopefully,
Right.
a lot of people we had a very, very nice house, and it had a garage. And so the team is looking over the data. They're looking over the cart. I'm trying to remember to eat. I'm trying to remember what that section looked like, and you're trying to eat and go back to sleep by 7 or 8 p.m. so you can wake up at 1 a.m. the next morning.
Sure.
So on Wednesday, I wake up and I go to the upper section.
Okay.
And the weather was kind of crappy for the upper sections the whole practice week. They won't let you run if it's too foggy, if it's snowy. They ask the veteran drivers. They usually ask the guys that have been there and gals that have been there a lot previously, and how do they feel about running? And they're like, we're not going to run in this. You're not going to gain anything. But as a rookie, you have to set a time on every section. And typically you run Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And Friday's like an optional day. And you still get scheduled sections. So, on Wednesday, I ended up taking one run directly behind a safety truck with blue and red flashy lights. My windshield did not have rain X on it. We hadn't done that yet. We didn't really think the weather was going to be bad. So just all this water condensation fogging up my whole windshield. My visor on my helmet is getting all... It was the craziest. I've never been so terrified in my life. And I know you shouldn't say that as a racer, but I was like, if I lose track of this safety truck in front of me, I'm not going to be able to see where I'm going to go. It was absolutely crazy and wild, but I did set a time.
So there's, in the pictures that you sent me, there's one picture of a foggy day. Is that the Wednesday that you went to the top?
That sure is.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And if it's going to come up here on the screen in just a second, and I think you're going to see the safety trick right in front of the car here, in this shot. It's one or two shots down the reel here. Stand by with us here. There it is, and I see a truck right in front of you, and that is how it guided you up. It was like Rudolph, taking Santa's sleigh to the top of the hill.
It was wild, and I was like, cool, we're going to do this at like 10 miles an hour. No, sir. Those safety guys are just like, and they went very, very fast. And when we did kind of the loop around the summit, the parking lot kind of makes a little loop, and then the truck started coming back down. And I refused to stop. I would just followed him right back down. And we got down to the bottom, and he was like, well, I know you didn't have any heat. And it's freezing cold.
Sure.
It's about 40 degrees. I'm, in my race suit. I don't have heat. I don't have the wipers. I don't have headlights. It was wild, but I mean, I'm smiling and I'm here. It is a memory that will stick with me forever, for sure.
So I'm guessing Thursday you got to do the bottom third.
I sure did, and that is where you qualify.
Okay.
Race day, run order. They do some different stuff. Like they'll do exhibition, slowest to fastest, and then they do like the Porsche Cup and GT4s, and then kind of the rest of the group, they run fastest to slowest on their qualifying time. Okay. So all those times come from the bottom section. When we got there, it was raining. I had to run a bias ply tire, which I figured out really quickly. I don't like those kind of tires. But luckily, it cleared up, and I got 3 runs on the bottom section, and I walked away feeling a lot more confident in myself and very confident in the cart that I was driving, and, just really looking forward to race day.
Now, do you ever get to do a full-length run prior to race day?
No. And even when you're running those sections, it's not the full sections. Like there's some buffer zones between the next section and the bottom section. So there's definitely a few areas that you never get to run at speed until race day. And then you only get that one run on race day.
So did you spend a lot of time watching full race run videos of other people going up to kind of memorize what happened and where it happened, or just to give yourself a feel? There's no sim for Pikes Peak, is there?
There is a on the Xbox.
Okay.
It's like Dirt 1 or Dirt Rally. I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but it is one of the only like scanned versions of the hill. And I am lucky enough to have it. And I have a very modest, very, very modest sim kind of wheel set up. And I did drive it. And, it took me about 10 times to realize that I just need to slow down or I'm just going to wreck the whole way. So, it took me a while to even just get to the top in the sim. And there's certain turns that you start to learn, okay, these are the turns you don't want to forget.
Right.
And then there's certain sections where you're like, this is the section I need to remember it's faster. So for me, it's a blend of reading the road as well as remembering quite a few important turns.
Did you get a chance once they let the public up to the top of the hill just to drive it in a streetcar?
I sure do. Yeah.
Okay.
So I actually went out. So I live at about 3,000 feet of elevation, and I think my mountains are super tall and amazing. When you land in Colorado Springs, you're at over 8,000 feet in elevation. The starting line's at like 9,000, and you're finishing at 14,000. And I had learned the last year that my body definitely needs time to adjust. So I went about a week early.
Okay.
And I was very, very fortunate enough to have partners and supporters to help me get into a rental car. So I was able to drive the mountain just about every day.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, driving it in a rental car is a little more scary because you actually get the chance to look over the edge. When you're racing it, you don't look over the edge. You're just looking at the road. So driving it a couple of times, and that was actually my very first time ever driving the road. I had never driven it even the year previously when I was out there working it. I never actually got to drive it. So my first time driving it was a little like, okay, yeah, well, this is something.
And in the rental car, you're probably 18 inches higher up off the ground than you are in your cart, right?
I was in a Hyundai Genesis GV80, so I was a lot higher up. But I gotta tell you, that thing handled very, very well. I've looked at the used cars since I've been back home. That was a really, really fun vehicle.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the vantage point, the handling characteristics of the vehicle are a lot different. But I was able to work through and remember the turns and sections that I was making a note of back home on my sim rig.
All right, before we get to race day, let me do this. I've got some partners that we have to thank here. So let's do that real quick here. Of course, we want to thank Ray Esports. And let's see, which one is up now? Let's take Solar Performance Specialties. They are here with us, of course. They're at most of the Solo National Tours. They're at the Solo Nationals, and they travel a lot. And, of course, they are available for you to get stuff from them during the during the year. You can just go to their website. All of that information is in the show notes. But real big thanks to those folks. Then, of course, we have RaceKeeper, the official in-car camera of Inside the SCCA. They have some really fantastic products, and a new one that's coming out soon that I can't talk about yet, but I can't wait until I can, and I can't wait till I get my hands on that little sucker. But yeah, they have a great product. We used it last year at Solo Nationals, and it's in a bunch of cars that race in the SCCA on road racing, so it's all over the place there. So check them out. And then, of course, our final partner here, Ray Esports. They are the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA, and they're the unofficial SCCA sim racing league. But they've got some great stuff. Love racing with those guys. Check them out. Again, everybody's stuff is in the show notes, and I am really, really excited because it's either going to be next week or the week after. We finally, after all of these years, after 170-plus episodes, we have a presenting sponsor for Inside the SCCA. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. I don't want to ruin it, but there's going to be a cool logo back here and a bunch of other stuff, and they're going to allow us to do some extra stuff because they are our presenting sponsors. So very cool with that, and I want to thank them for being part of us, even before we tell you who they are. All right, back to Ryan Cheek. I've got the business out of the way. Let's talk about race day. I know how it ended. Not exactly as you hoped for, but let's get to that in a second. What is the timetable for race day? It's not a 1 a.m. get up time to go to the mountain, right?
No, we got to sleep in until like 4 or 5 a.m.
Sleep until 4 or 5.
It was amazing.
Awesome. So how does race day work for a rookie at Pikes Peak?
So all the cars load in the day previous. So on Saturday, we load in, you get your spot. It is kind of a small parking area. So we got one parking spot, and you bring in your pop-up tent, you bring in your car, and you dump off like tires and other things you might need. Race day, everybody gets up, everybody's got to have their passes. You, on the way in, you kind of get to bypass a lot of the spectators and run the left lane up into the park. Right. So that feels kind of neat. You know, I had a really, really great crew with me, and you know, it was a lot of excitement, and then it was a lot of waiting because you know, I'm not a super. As a rookie, I wasn't the most fast person, so I knew I was going to be running after lunch. Runs started going around 6:37 a.m. and you're just full of excitement. You're watching everybody run. There's very big screens around you in the paddock, and you're able to see what's going on up on the hill. And you know, you're managing your nerves, you're managing your boredom, you're remembering to drink water and eat. So you know, it was very weird. I've never had that level of being prepared to race and then waiting 8 to 9 hours to race. And so it was interesting.
And you get multiple runs, right?
No, sir. You only get the one run, unless you're lucky enough to get a red flag, like Jimmy Ford. I think he caught 3 of them. And so if you get red flagged, you get to come back down. You get about 20 minutes to refuel, get your car reset up, and head back up the hill.
So you want a red flag right before the finish line.
Nobody wants that. Nobody really wants a red flag at all because, like I said, you've been preparing all day to make that run, and you're on point from the moment that green flag drops until hopefully you take that checkered.
Okay, so you start the discussion in December, you find out in January, you spend 6 months preparing, and you get one run. No pressure. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything and anything. Murphy's Law.
So you go in the order of qualifying. So the fastest car gets to go first.
Generally.
Okay.
There's some, you know, which different ways about it. Earlier in the runs is exhibition, and then you know, GT4s and that kind of stuff. But generally, after a certain amount of cars, they start running fastest to slower qualifying times.
Got it. So it's time to strap yourself in the car. What time about did you run? Early afternoon?
I believe it was like 2 or 3 o'clock.
Okay.
They have an official coming around. He's got a cool notebook, and he just shows it to you, and it says 10 minutes till you leave. And if there's no red flags, then it's roughly 10 minutes. But I think from the time the first official told me it was 10 minutes till I was running, it was about 45 or 50 minutes. So we were ready to go for like an hour, which you don't really think about it, but it takes a toll on your mental.
Sure.
And it's getting hot. It was one of the hottest days they had experienced on race day. So you're down at the 9,000 feet of elevation and kind of sweating in your race suit. And, when you make it to the top, you're probably a little chilly.
Yeah.
So the countdown is countdown. And when they tell you it's go time, you have like 30 seconds to get to the start line. As an open wheel, they weigh you before your qualifying runs, and then they weigh you before race day.
Got it.
I'm not sure what other vehicles they do that with, and I'm still, I'm a little curious why they do that with the open wheel, but it makes sense because you could probably pull some weight off and get below a certain weight
Sure.
if you needed to. But it's very stressful. Like you're like, okay, I gotta, I'm running oxygen, so I gotta put these weird tubes on my head. I gotta get my headstock. I'm nervous. I'm trying not to think about too much. You've got a crowd of people around you because there's people all walking through paddock. There's people lined up right there at the start line. It's very, very surreal. And, in that moment for me, I'm just concentrating like, I just got to drive.
Yep.
Just got to drive. Don't forget how to drive.
So you had some, I'm guess, clutch slippage coming away from the starting line. It was interesting.
We were having some fuel issues.
Okay.
The entire testing week. It was in the tuning. We did not have enough time to get this thing tuned out the way we wanted to. And when we were tuning it, we were back here on the East Coast at a lower elevation.
Sure.
But we were working remotely with a qualified tuner, and they were helping us immensely. But you don't want to make large changes when you're
right.
2,000 miles away from home. But so during testing, we were noticing that the fuel was running too rich. So there was small adjustments getting made throughout the week. My symptoms that I was having as a driver is I wasn't able to like full throttle. I was having to really manage my throttle input. I could only get in so smoothly and quickly. And every elevation we were having different symptoms.
Sure.
So I had run at the top my last time. On Friday, I got to run the top again, and it worked out better for me to rev the engine and kind of ride the clutch out. So at the bottom of the hill with the fuel richness, I was having to keep the RPMs up, and I was like, okay, when in doubt, throttle out. So like, as I was like taking off, I was trying to kind of dump the clutch and maybe do a little bit of a burnout, but the car was just not having it. Like
right.
we were just having a really bad air to fuel ratio. So once you kind of take off, nobody can touch that car.
Right.
Like if the car had not restarted for me, we would have been done. Nobody can come over and spray like brake cleaner
right.
in your air intake and get it going. Like you've got to just hope the car gets going. And leaving the line, I knew I did not have the same car that I had been driving all week. I knew something was going on, and I really had to adjust my driving. I really felt it just wasn't as quick. It was not as
right.
throttle responsive. I could not go as deep into the throttle. So right out the gate, I knew I was driving a completely different car. And it took me a minute to kind of figure out what can I do with the car. And, I kind of had the moment where this little voice was like, don't be pissed off, just drive the car you have. And you're getting to drive Pikes Peak. So drive the car, drive the racing line, drive it as you would want to drive it, And honestly, the longer I drove it, the better it got. It started getting a little more peppier, or maybe I was getting in the rhythm. But it started feeling really, really good. So it was when I came around Devil's Playground, which is one of the most packed out spectator areas. I try not to look because I'm trying to stay focused on the race, but I still can see all the people standing on the side of the road, and it just is like I'm really doing this, like I literally said that to myself. And that was a section I hadn't really gotten to drive, because from the middle section, you kind of stop, but it's a nice straightaway. So I'm like throttling through there, and I'm like, okay, we're doing this. We're really, really doing it. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of a sweeper. So I come around the sweeper, and I'm looking ahead, and I see a marmot in the road. And I was like, oh, there's the marmot that I've been seeing all morning that, safety's been trying to get out. And I make the decision to go in front of him, and I get back on the racing line, and I downshift into the turn, and coming out of that turn at bottomless pit, the cart was like, nope. So I thought I could do it in second, and it wasn't happy, so I moved down to first. It wasn't happy, so I went back to second and kind of got it going. And then we had our major mechanical, and we ended up shooting rod number one off a cylinder one right out of the motor.
Oh.
And when it happened, I didn't know what happened. I just kind of felt no more power. I saw a little puff of smoke. The engine's behind me, so I can't see anything. I literally kept my foot planted in the throttle. Like, no, no, it didn't. And no, we're still gonna make it. I was kind of completely shocked. The cart had such a major mechanical just a few miles from finish. I was heartbroken, but it happens. This was a new build. This was, new for me, and I always wonder maybe I could have done something different.
Sure.
But I made it pretty far. I'm still pretty proud about it.
So we're watching the run right now, and honestly, when I was watching it before you started telling the story, other than the issue at the start, the cart looked like it was running pretty great until it wasn't. And I'm looking at you. It looks like you're hitting your apexes. You got your turn-in points pretty well. And, you don't look like someone who's never made a full at race speed run up Pikes Peak. You look pretty solid.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. That, like I said, when I realized I didn't have the same cart I had, I just was like, let's focus on the line. Let's really work on carrying these speeds, being really smooth, not relying on the speed coming out of the turn. Let's do what we can, and still be modest, because I didn't want to fly off the side of the mountain. That would have been a way worse way to not make it to the summit.
Yeah, that would be really, really not fun. So, so you're back now. You've had a little bit of time to reflect. Not much. I know you were talking before the show. You were a little bit nervous because this is really the first time you've talked in depth about the experience. Clearly not the end that you were hoping for, but did you have a good time?
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
I mean, 100% wholeheartedly. There has not been a day that I haven't thought about that race again. I've already been talking with the Marion Cross Cart. We want to come back. We want to be bigger, better, more prepared. We're gonna make it to the summit. And there's so much information and experience that I have gathered just in the past 2 years being a volunteer and then a driver that you can't really put a price on. Like, somebody can't write you a book and you read it and you come out with the same kind of knowledge as being there. It is 100% experience based, and I see why the heavier hitters, the people that have been doing it so much longer, are so much more quick and so much more comfortable with everything versus the newer drivers.
So when you reapply after being accepted the first time, does that kind of grant you entry the next time, or do you have to go through that whole process of applying and hoping you get accepted again?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of like starting at base zero. Luckily that, I'm sure they're making decisions on, was your team cooperative? Did they follow the rules? Did you cause any problems? Like those are going to be things that, could make or break your reentry, but you still have to re-enter just and apply just like everybody else.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm happy to hear that the plan, if all goes well, is to go back and do it again. It's one of those things where I feel like you've got some unfinished business there, and you want to go back and do it. So you went last year as a worker, as like a flagger or a safety worker?
Correct. Yeah, I was a volunteer, and that was an opportunity provided for me by the Appalachian Hill Climb series. Hayward Wagner, Rob Leslie, Brad Gates, they are on the board for the Appalachian Hill Climb series, and they had planned to go out there and volunteer and get research and kind of see how that event is run.
Sure.
So they could bring that information back and make our events better. And I paid my way. I had to buy my plane tickets. I had to pay for my lodging. It was not a free ride, but I got to be on the mountain during practice, and I got to work the summit on race day. And actually my husband and I ran like the memory cards out of the race cars down to the media so that they could pull the video. So, it was kind of a maybe not a super important job, but it was kind of an important job.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I spent a whole day at the summit, and that was something that was valuable information as well. Even after being there for almost a whole week, I was still wrecked of, being at 14,000 feet.
So you were there without any real idea that 12 months later you were going to be there driving to the top on race day. That's just nuts.
So I'm a hill climber, and Pikes Peak is a pinnacle hill climb.
Sure.
Obviously. Driving, and when I say driving, I mean riding in the back of a minivan with Hayward Wagner at the wheel, who thinks everything is a race car, and he drives everything like a race car. Love you, Hayward, but you do. You drive everything like a race car.
Something's never changed with Hayward.
We're looking off into the expanse, and we're like, I'd love to do this hill climb. And when I left, I was 50-50. I was like, I want to do this, but that's kind of terrifying. That's a lot, but time heals all wounds. And, about by October, November, I was like, I would love to race Pikes Peak. So when somebody offered it, I was just like, yeah, let's do that.
So did you go to PRI looking for a Pikes Peak ride?
No, sir. I have to give a shout out to Ellsworth Racing. They're Viper drivers. They're friends of mine I met through SCCA's Time Trial National program. I met them at the track. I love Vipers. I'm a huge American muscle car lover. So they show up with a couple of Vipers. I'm gonna come over and talk to you. And we've stayed in touch, and they go every year. And so they were like, you should definitely come. And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna sit at the couch, sit at home, sit on the couch, not do anything. Come on, And so they actually kind of coerced my husband and I to come up. They provided a place for us to sleep. We kind of helped out with food and that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to go and see what that was about. As as I progress through my motorsports career, I need to learn how to approach potential sponsors.
Right.
I need to start making these connections. I also had questions because eventually I always wanted to take my Mustang to Pikes Peak. So I'm like, well, I'm probably going to need a Pro Charger. I'm going to need better brakes. So all these companies are in one place. But no, I got drugged and shamed and, just I never had any intention of going to PRI. So definitely shout out to Bob and Ray. Thank you guys so much for making me come out there. And I got to ride to Pikes Peak. Couldn't be here without them for sure.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a little bit of a crazy person, well, I am, but everybody knows that. I am a firm believer that the universe puts people in particular places and moments in time for a purpose. And good people get those opportunities to be at PRI, have a conversation with a team that might want you to go to the universe works in mysterious ways. And that the whole process from going last year, 2 years ago, last year, to work it and being there for that, and then getting shamed into going to PRI, and then happening to talk to the people who knew who you were even before you got there, to a phone call in January, to making your application, all of that. This was not an accident. This is what happens when good people do good things and work hard. And I am so proud of you and so excited to hopefully have another conversation with you next year at this time after you've made it to the summit of Pikes Peak.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And, a lot of people are very sincerely sorry that we didn't make it to the summit this year, but I'm right with you. I feel so much happens for a reason. I don't know why we didn't make it to the top this year, but I'm hungry. I'm going to eat. We're going to go back. We're going to get to the summit. This was never going to be a one-off thing. Like, I'm addicted. Like, I'm going to try to do this for the rest of my life. This is a big part of my life from now on.
All right, we're running out of time, but there was one conversation. Maybe this should be a whole nother podcast. I'm a guy who's never done a single hill climb in my life, and I want to do Pikes Peak. Maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, and so out here on the West Coast, I don't know that there's any enough hill climbs for me to get any experience or enough experience to be able to have that resume to send in. So what do you recommend I do out here? And do I have to come out and play with you guys a little bit on the East Coast?
Of course you have to come play with us. No, there's the Colorado Hill Climb Association,
okay,
which does have some off-roady kind of, hill climbs. But there's people that hadn't ever done hill climbs that were competing this year. I don't think Rob Dom's ever done a hill climb. I know Catherine Legg had never done a hill climb.
Well, but
obviously I'm throwing some big names.
I was going to say,
there,
those are people who've done a lot of racing.
I know, but they're the rookies that I know and got to talk to, like Jim Hall the second. He's been doing racing, but he's not a huge racer. So I would say just stick to your path, keep on your driving, making sure that you feel prepared for Pikes Peak. If you've never gone and witnessed the event, I would recommend volunteering so you can maybe get some of inside of what that's even going to feel like. But just stay your course, do the work, and I think everybody has a shot. I mean, yeah. I don't think if you've never driven a race car or never done anything on track, you probably are not likely to get in. But right. If you've got your track experience, you've got your behind the wheel experience, Yeah. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
I've got one more question, but before I get to that, let's do some thank yous here. Trad's Photos, Kane33, Rebecca Thomason, Greg Ginsberg, Hot Rod Monza, 7 Spot, Brian Stasinski, all in the chat. Thank you all for being here. If you haven't yet, smash the like button and subscribe so that we can get a lot of people to see this. Ryan, this didn't happen without a lot of people helping you out. I see some people in the background, some signs in the background. This is your shot. Give everybody the big thank yous.
Huge shout out to Racing for ALS. My team, American Cross Kart, definitely couldn't do it without you guys. The Insane Hill Climb posse, my best buds. I can't wait to see you this weekend at the Dragon Hill Climb in Robbinsville, North Carolina. Obviously, Hawk, Summit, Lifeline. I'm totally forgetting somebody, but I seriously, Michelin. Oh, everybody. It took a village, you guys. This is not just one woman going after it. Like it is a whole team, a whole support system, and support the people that support grassroots racers. Like definitely Hawk for sure.
And let's not forget American Cross Kart.
Of course, they're grassroots too.
I'm trying to help you out here a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I should remind people to make a list before they come on the show so that when I ask the question, they can just go, like the Oscars, these are the people I have to thank. But no, it's great that you're able to get out there, and I look forward to having more conversations, and maybe I'll come out and play with you guys out there on some of those hill climbs in the next couple of years. I would look forward to doing that. So
we'd love to see you.
All right, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Inside the SCCA. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network so you won't miss any episodes. You can also subscribe to the Racing Network here on YouTube. That would be awesome. Leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. Follow us on social media so you can find out who our next guest is. That is on Twitter. It's at RacingWire Info. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.
I'm Dorsey Schrader, and when I'm on my way to a race, I'll listen to the SCCA podcast, Inside the Short Bus.
Inside the SCCA is a presentation of the RacingWire Podcast Network and Rural 15 Productions. This podcast is not affiliated with, endorsed, or sponsored by the Sports Car Club of America. The views expressed within are those of the host and our guests, and not that of the SCCA.